Welcome. This video is actually a bit a follow-up of another video that is called From the Collapse to Paradise, in which I describe the main dysfunctions of the free market and its total collapse due to the arrival of the smart machines. The smart machines will take over the jobs, and if the people lose their source of income, they cannot buy the production, the businesses and the companies go bankrupt, and you collapse the economy. So the politicians are well aware of what is coming, and some of them are proposing as a solution that we create a universal basic income. And I want in this video to explain why the universal basic income is actually not a real solution, but could be in fact detrimental to the purpose that is intended. So what is the universal basic income? It is the idea to give everyone unconditionally a basic income, an income that is sufficient to fulfill the essential needs of the people. It seems like a bright idea, and it's a very good intention. But the whole problem lies in how it will be financed. And we have basically 4 ways to finance it. The first way will be to tax the companies and businesses. The second will be to increase the budget deficit, to go into debt or print money. The third one will be to redirect the money that goes into negative projects like defense, or to simplify social aid. And the fourth one will be to tax the rich. And we see that none of those ways actually work, and sometimes it could even be detrimental to the purpose of the universal basic income. And hopefully we will propose something much better. So the first way, to tax businesses, corporations, that will not work, because each time you tax them, they report the cost of the taxes into the price of their goods and services. So you end up creating more inflation. If you tax the corporations to finance the universal basic income and you give it to the people will spend it in higher prices. So at the end of it, you have not helped them. You have always this idea of taxing the robots that is coming up all the time. So this will not be a good idea because of inflation. But on top of that, you will invite the companies and businesses and corporations to find another country with a better taxation system to implant their factories. So you will have the production leave your country. So that's not what you want to do. As a matter of fact, each time you increase the taxation on your businesses and corporations, you create a condition for a recession. You make it harder for new business to get started and for businesses to make money. And some of them will go bankrupt, and you decrease your production. So it's very difficult, and you have to align your taxation system with other countries, so it's not easily done. So the other idea would be to finance the universal basic income through a budget deficit. So this is not sustainable, and this is very costly. You cannot go into debt like this indefinitely. So you can print money. If you can nationalize the central bank and print your own money. But this is a big problem too, because when you cannot do it indefinitely, you will inject so much money in the system that you will depreciate the money and you will create inflation. The big problem with the universal basic income, to give money like this on a permanent basis to many people, is that what you give, you need to get it back on the other side so that the money circulates. The whole problem is that the money needs to circulate in a loop. You give the money to the people, they spend it and give this money to the owners of the means and production when they buy their products and services. And the owners of the means of production of the goods and services accumulate this money, and they cannot accumulate this money like this. They will want to transfer this money into assets, and they will buy everything they can. They will buy land, properties, and everything the state owns, and you will increase the wealth inequality. So with the basic income, you try to help the poor, but in fact what you will do, you will increase the wealth inequality. So this is a real conundrum. There is also this idea of financing the universal basic income by using the money of the military and all the negative projects. There is a lot of money that is wasted in the military, and with that we could easily finance the universal basic income. But no, because this money that is spent by the government is also the salary of the people who work for the military. So you cannot create unemployment and hope to finance and to have more money to finance the basic income, because the money you get on one side, you have to give it back to the same people as the basic income if you take their jobs. So there is nothing to gain by the government saving money. Actually, when the government spend money, it's a form of helping a social head. It's a form of helping people with an income. So, and those who think that we can simplify social aid to create a universal basic income, why make it universal? Because the intent is to help the poor. So, if you give this money also to the rich, the poor have less money altogether. So there is nothing to gain by simplifying there is no extra money to gain by simplifying social aid. So there is a difficulty here. And the first proposition would be to tax the rich. Taxing the rich is not easy to do. They are in control of the government, and it's almost them who write the laws. So it has always been something very difficult to do. But nevertheless, we need to explore in this direction. But before that, we will have a look at how the money circulates in the economy. And hopefully we'll find a way to finance the universal basic income. Let's consider now the simplified version of the circulation of money. And if you want more details, watch the video from the collapse to paradise that we have already mentioned. We have on one side the owners of the means of production, and those who make money with their money. We could call them the capitalists. We are going to call them the rich or the rentiers. They don't need to work. They make money with their money by investing it, by lending it, or by buying means of production. And on the other side, you have all the others, those who need to work for a living, and those who depend on others to live. We are going to call them the consumers, even though the rich are also consumers. And you have the case where a person can be both. A worker can make some savings and make more money with his money by investing it. In this case, he will share his time proportionally to his income. If he makes 10% of his income by making money with his money, he will spend 10% of his time on the side of the rich, and the rest, 90% of his time, on the side of the consumers. The consumers will buy the goods and services they need from the owners of the means of production, and they will receive a salary in exchange of the work they have done for them. In the middle, you have the government, which has also expenditures and incomes. It collects taxes and gets paid for its services, but also it must pay the salaries of the civil servants and social aid. But also to operate, it needs to buy some goods and services from the owners of the means of production. The goal of the rich is to get richer, is to make money with their businesses and investments. Therefore, globally, the amount of money that goes from the consumers to the rich must be greater than the one returning back to the consumers. We have seen in the video that for the consumers not to lose any purchasing power, the government needs to capture the money spent by the consumers that has not returned back by borrowing it. It means that the government will issue treasury bonds with attractive interest rates to attract the money that the rich will want to secure. The rich have always the need to secure their money. And the money will then be able to return to the consumers directly by paying the wages of the civil servants or through social aid, or indirectly through government spending. The government will buy goods and services that will be converted into salaries for the consumers. We concluded two things. To avoid a recession and to keep the purchasing power of the consumers, the government has to keep going into debt continuously. And whatever the government on the left or on the right, it's the same policy. To support the economy, the government has to go into debt. The difference, and they fight like dogs over that, it's whether we give more to social aids and the civil servants, or we spend more towards the private sector, so we give more work and money to the consumers. That makes the system very unstable. The government keeps going further and further into debt, and when we try to reduce the debt through austerity, we create recessions and the purchasing power of the consumers collapses. It is a system to enrich the rich at the expense of the government and the consumers, and it creates a lot of social and economical injustice. Now that we have introduced this model, we are going to see the effect of an injection of money like the universal basic income on the economy. We are going to simplify the diagram by saying that the government actually acts like an intermediary, and we will put ourselves in the ideal case where all the money spent by the consumers return to them as salaries or social aid. It's an ideal case which actually never happens. It is a theoretical balanced state, but it is unstable without the government going further and further into debt. Let's suppose now that the level of consumption is not enough to fulfill all the needs of the population, and the government therefore needs to inject some money. We are not going to have a universal basic income and add money on both sides. It's useless to give money to the rich and take it back later, so we will only consider that we inject some money on the side of the consumers. For clarity, we will make the existing consumption disappear. We know it is there. We will only consider the flow of the money that has been injected. We are going to give some money to the poorest. We will spend it and give it to the rich. The rich will keep a part as profit, and the rest will return as salary. This money will be spent again by the consumers, and another part will be kept as profit, and what's remaining will return and be spent again. And after a few rounds like this, all the money that has been injected will be accumulated on the side of the owners of the means of production, on the side of the rich. We observe two things. First, we have created some growth. We have allowed some people, the needy, to consume more, so it's a good thing. But this growth will progressively disappear as the rich are putting some money aside. And after a while, all the money that has been injected will end up in the coffers of the rich. And we will end up at the same level at which we started from, but with the rich having accumulated all the money that has been injected. Let's see now what the rich will do with the money they have put aside. They will seek to invest it or to secure it. They can invest it in productive investment by building new factories or buying new machines. But these are investments that have already been accounted for because they have been spent as wages. Some work has been done and possibly new jobs have been created. Wages have been paid. But in fact, productive investments are very limited. Because why produce more when the purchasing power of the consumers is decreasing? There is always a part of the profit that is not invested productively because it is risky, but it is invested in another way. It is securized. The rich can invest their money on the financial market by buying shares or financial products. But it is money that goes from one rich to another. I buy this, I sell you that. It's not necessary to display it on the diagram because this is something that is internal to the rich. It doesn't return to the consumers. It is just changing hands. So you see the problem of the rich. They accumulate money, but money is losing its value through time with inflation. They accumulate something that loses its value through time. So their problem is to convert it into wealth, into assets that will keep their value through time. Therefore, they are going to buy all the assets of the consumers, their land, their property, but also they are going to buy the public assets, the forests, the public transports, the airports, everything they could privatize. All the possible assets. The rich are not going to spend this money in consumer goods, something that could give a salary to the consumers, but they will grab all the wealth of the consumers, all the assets of value. And we will end up with a transfer of wealth from the consumers to the rich. And it will increase the wealth inequality. So you see the problem here. We inject some money to help with the consumption of the consumers, but in fact we impoverish the consumers who will be depossessed from their assets. Now, if the government continues to inject some money, so same thing, the transfer of wealth, but this time the prices will go up. The demand to buy assets will rise. The prices of all the assets, including productive assets, will rise. It will create inflation. Here, what's important to understand, the more we inject money in the system, the more we enrich the rich, the more wealth inequality we will create, even if we give this money to the poorest. When the consumers were owning the means of production themselves, they were farmers or craftsmen, everybody was benefiting from an injection of money. But today it is the minority which owns the means of production, which will grab the money, which will accumulate the money. The money will not spread among the population. So you understand the problem of the universal basic income. What we give to the consumers, we will have to get it back entirely from the rich, from those who will grab it. To give it back, of course, to the consumers, but also to avoid that there is a transfer of wealth from the consumers to the rich. So to capture the money that the rich accumulate, the government can borrow it from the rich, and that's what it has been doing until now. It will issue treasury bonds and borrow from the rich, while creating the illusion it will reimburse them one day. But of course the borrowing can't last indefinitely. One day this illusion stops working when the rich realize that the government has too much debt to pay them back. And when the rich lose confidence in the ability of the government to pay back its debts, that's when we have a crisis and a collapse. Therefore, to be able to finance the universal basic income sustainably, we won't be able to rely on the borrowing of the government. Therefore, we will have to use taxation. Once the money we have given to the consumers has been accumulated by the rich, we don't really have a choice. If we can't borrow, we will need to take it from them. Taxing the rich is always something difficult to do. There are always loopholes to avoid taxation. But above all, we will have to tax all the profits the rich will want to put aside and secure. And that will mean that we will prevent the rich to get richer. And that means that we would have to abandon the free market. We would prevent the entrepreneurs and the owners of the means of production from making any profit. We would have to abandon the freedom to decide for the wages and the price of the goods to make some profit. And this would be the end of free enterprise and the free market. So we necessarily arrive to the conclusion that to finance the universal basic income or a minimum income, and to do it continuously and sustainably, we will have to operate some nationalizations of the production. All of it or part of it, that's what we're going to see, but it's not possible otherwise, because the money needs to circulate. When the government gives continuously money to the consumers, this money needs to return to the government in one way or another. If the money goes through the owners of the means of production, they will keep some money aside. The money needs to return entirely to the government so that he can give it back to the consumers. Therefore, to finance the universal basic income, the government needs to own the means of production. We'll better understand why and how we can finance the universal basic income by looking at the income distribution of the population from the poorest to the richest. Here is how the monthly income of the population would look like. Here you can see that a part of the population doesn't earn anything, they are completely dependent, and then it will increase sharply towards the end. In fact, here we can only represent part of the curve, because this curve is actually impossible to draw. Because if we try to represent it in its entirety, it will look like this, a very sharp peak. And it is for this reason that you will never see this curve. To see anything, you will need to zoom enormously. And if you zoom, you have this. We will draw now the line that represents the monthly income that splits the population in two equal parts. This monthly income is in the order of $1,000, maybe a couple of $1,000. But for the income of the super rich, the millionaires and billionaires, you need to earn hundreds, even thousands of times this. To become a billionaire, that's what you would need to earn monthly. To represent the income of the super rich, you need more height on the graph, 1,000 times more. We will still be able to represent the income of the super rich on the graph by saying that everything that is above a limit will be represented in a block on the right next to the curve. In this way, all the money that has been earned monthly by the population is represented on the graph. This money has been made in two ways, by working, and we will represent it in green, or by making your money work for you. It is all the art of finance. It is to make money with money. Finance is the art of making money without working. The richer people get, the less they have to work, because they make money through dividends, through rents, through interest, and we call all that rents. In fact, it's all the money the people make by owning the means of production of goods and services. It is all the money the people make by lending their money, by renting properties, by owning companies, and it includes the banks. We will represent all the money the means of production provide in a red circle on the graph. We will represent with an horizontal line the universal income we wish to give to the population. It's an income that will be added to what the people already earned, because they will continue to work and earn rents. Everything that is below the line, and that we represent in orange, is what the government needs to get to finance the universal basic income. And we are now able to represent on the circle and on the graph the part of the means of production the government needs to nationalize to finance the universal basic income. By the nationalizations, we will take from the rich a part of their rents to distribute them to the people as the universal basic income. What is interesting to notice is that we can keep a private sector. We are not obliged to nationalize everything. We can keep free enterprise. We can let the entrepreneurs realize their ideas and create their own business. But you still need the government to recover a part of the rents of the rich, a part of the means of production. And then it's not necessary to tax the rich anymore, because you will have to tax them the equivalent amount of their rent. So it makes sense that this part of the rents belongs to the state through the nationalizations. So what could the state nationalize? If you understood well, it should nationalize the means of production that are essential to the people. A part of the production and distribution of food, the energy, transport, education, health, and even social housing. Everything that is essential to the people to live. Remember, the money needs to circulate in a loop. Therefore, the money the government will give as universal basic income, it will get it back by selling the goods and services that are essential to the people. The rest, like luxury items, could stay in the private sector. So now if the state gives the money to the people so that it can buy its product, the state could also give the product for free. The state doesn't have to give all the universal basic income as a form of money. It could also make some of its production available for free. And as the state is nationalizing more and more, it could make more and more of the production available for free. Ultimately, we have shown that we cannot finance the universal basic income unless we nationalize. And with the nationalization, we are not obliged to give all the universal basic income as a form of money, but we could also make parts of the goods and services available for free. But the big problem we wanted to solve with the universal basic income is still not solved. A mixed economy will not solve the problem of the increase of the wealth inequality due to automatization, artificial intelligence. More and more people are going to lose their jobs and lose their source of income, and only the owners of the means of production will be the beneficiaries of the wealth created by the technology. Therefore, the danger of the universal basic income is to perpetuate and even increase the wealth inequality, to make bearable a system that is profoundly unfair. To better understand it, we'll represent a company by a triangle or a pyramid. Everything that contributes to the value of this company is in the pyramid. The more value the company has, the bigger the pyramid. At the beginning of a company, it is the entrepreneur who is alone and works in his shed, and the value of the company and the triangle is very small. And the contribution of the entrepreneur to the value of the company is represented in blue and fills up all the surface of the triangle or the volume of the pyramid. At one stage, the entrepreneur, to develop his business, will need money. He will ask investors to lend him money, or he will sell them some shares of his business. These investments will allow to buy some machines and hire employees, and this will raise the value of the business. We are going to represent in red the contribution of the investors to the value of the company, and in green the contribution of the employees, which is to produce and sell the products. If the business is profitable, it will grow and hire more people, and the contribution of the employees to the value of the company will be bigger and bigger as the company grows and prospers. The first injustice is that all the value of the company, all the wealth, belongs to the investors, and if he still has some shares, to the entrepreneur. But it is the employees of the company who have contributed the most to its value. So you can say that the employees have been paid for their work and they have been compensated. But the system is such that the companies are globally profitable, and therefore globally the amount of money received by the workers must be less than the one generated by the sale of the products. That means that the salary of the workers is just good enough to buy consumer goods, but not to acquire wealth. And in fact, they cannot even afford all the consumer goods. Therefore, they cannot even afford all what they have produced, and certainly not acquire the wealth they have contributed to make. That is the companies. And the second injustice is that the contribution to the company that we have represented here is in fact the visible part of a huge iceberg. Any product, any service relies on a technology that has been developed during thousands of years. And all the innovations, starting with the fire, the wheels, writing, everything that could have contributed to making the products, the roads, the schools and universities to train the workers and engineers, everything that could contribute directly or indirectly to the company, to what the company needs to exist, all this contribution is not taken into account. It means that the company will exploit for free all the infrastructure, all the knowledge, all the resources that the community has accumulated. whatever the product, whatever the service, the contribution of the entrepreneur or the innovator is minimal, insignificant in regard to all the innovations that were necessary to make this new innovation possible. In regard to the contribution that the community has made to make possible all the innovations. The added value by the entrepreneur to his innovation is ridiculously small compared to the value that the community has contributed to his innovation. Therefore, the investor rentiers are the big winners. They are the ones who will benefit from the wealth that has been created, not only by the workers, but also by the whole community. So to prevent private individuals to become the owners of the means of production through their investments, and that we give this role to the community, it's something very fair. The capitalists, the financiers, the rentiers, those who make a living by investing their money, by profiting from other people's work and innovations, by profiting from the resources, the infrastructures, and the realizations of the whole community, are like parasites who live at the expense of their host. It is not only unfair, but it creates also instabilities. When the host has been depleted, that is, when the government, when the workers and the consumers are ruined, when they don't have enough purchasing power to continue, it's a crisis and a collapse. One solution that we could propose is communism. We collectivize all the means of production, but then we give up the dynamism that is created by free enterprise, especially at the time of the creation of a business. Free enterprise is a fundamental freedom, and also the freedom to make some profit, the freedom to enrich yourself by providing a service to others. It's a huge factor for progress, and it is one of the reasons why communism has been partly abandoned. An elegant solution that is proposed here, it is indeed the collectivization of the means of production, but with the possibility to rent them to private entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs cannot buy and own the means of production, they can only borrow them from the community, and they can only enrich themselves with the value they add to the means of production. The community owns the land, the resources, the machines, the factories, but rent them to those who want to use them to enrich themselves. In this way, we give the community the possibility to own rents and finance everything it needs, including a universal income, which will not be basic, but which will ensure the well-being of the people. And we could call it the universal well-being income. And we prevent the accumulation of wealth through private property, since we can only rent for a given period of time. Therefore, the people will not rent something they don't use. It will be a waste of money. Like this, we avoid the accumulation of wealth when the rich convert into assets the money they accumulate. We are not going to describe more the renting system because we have done it in details in the video we have mentioned. I invite you again to watch this video and to study this renting system because it really brings some systemic changes that will allow a smooth transition to a new society without work and money that we call Paradism. It is a future society towards which we are going, when we will have automatized and robotized all the production. We won't need to work anymore, and therefore we won't need money anymore. We will have a leisure society, a paradisiacal society, where the people will only do what they enjoy doing. It will be a paradise on earth. So I can conclude by saying that the current economic system we are in, capitalism and the free market, are doomed. They are doomed because the arrival of artificial intelligence and the robots will take over the jobs and the people will lose their income and the system will collapse. So to avoid that, the idea is to introduce the universal basic income, but it's not the only idea. We could also make part of the production available for free to the people. But we have seen that to finance that, we have to collectivize the means of production. And we can do it without introducing communism and its drawbacks by having a renting system where it is a community which owns the means of production and rent it to the CEOs, to the entrepreneurs to operate their business. So that will allow the communities to benefit from the rents provided by the means of production instead of having, like we have today, private investors getting all the benefits from those rents. We will have now the community getting the rents. That will allow the community to finance not only the universal basic income, but also all what is necessary for the people, infrastructure, education, and so on. So this renting system is an elegant way to facilitate the transition towards a new society that we call Paradism. It is the society of a paradise without work and money that is brought by technology. So that is a great idea of this renting system, is to lead to this paradisical society that we call Paradism. That's it. I hope you like this idea, and please, if you liked it, share this video and spread these ideas around you. Thank you.